Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we provide workshop and exercises to learn about AWS services. These workshop and exercises are published to our website aws-dojo.com. Some time back, I talked about AWS Glue DataBrew and I gave a small demo about that. This is a recent service launched during the reInvent time. Today, I'm going to talk about AWS Glue DataBrew service in detail, and there's also a workshop which will give you hands-on experience of using Glue DataBrew. So let's get started. So AWS Glue DataBrew is a service which users can use to actually clean and transform their data without writing any single line of code. So suppose you have a data stored into say S3 bucket or a relational database or in Redshift, and you want some visual tool to able to perform transformation on your data. And transformation could be as simple as cleansing your data or filling the gaps or do say merging of two tables or apply some kind of formula on the table to do some new calculation. Any of these transformations you want to perform on your data, you can perform in a visual format, in a visual way. And then once you are done with your transformation, actually you can convert that into an automatic job, which you can then use for automatic data cleansing. And all this transformation you can perform without writing any single line of code. So let's get started about this service. First, we will understand some of the fundamental concepts related to this service, and then we will explore these concept in detail. Finally, towards the end of the presentation, there is a workshop which you can run to actually get a hands-on experience of using Glue DataBrew. So, talking about the core concepts involved with Glue DataBrew, the first thing is data set. And data set represents the source data you want to perform your transformation. Your data could be in S3 bucket, could be in a relational database, could be in a Redshift. It could be any of those places where data is stored. But your starting point is always to have some source data defined as a data set which you want to use, where you want to apply your transformation. Once you create a data set, it also provides a feature to get data profile. And when I'm talking about data profile, you can look into volumetric as well as statistics of the data as a whole, and you can also look at the column level statistics of the data. But yeah, you can really profile your data and understand how your data is distributed, what is the quality of the data. Those things you can inspect as a part of the data profile. Then you create project, and project is kind of a workspace where you can bring your data set and then you can perform your transformations. Okay, so project is nothing but a working environment which you can use to apply different type of transformation on your data set and finally convert this whole set of transformation into an automatic job. Transformations are performed using recipes. There are pre-built recipes as a part of DataBrew, which you can apply on your data set to perform different types of transformation. Okay, and finally, when you have you have got your data, you have applied a transformation, you are happy with the outcome of that, and you want to convert that into some kind of repeatable job which can say run based on the event or based on the schedule, then you can easily convert that into job, and that is also a feature provided by DataBrew. And when you are building this whole, bringing your data set and then performing a transformation and then writing a job, which is then writing to some kind of destination, when you're performing this whole pipeline thing, there's also a feature called data lineage, which can help you visualize how data have moved from source to transformations to the destinations. That whole flow or the whole data lineage you can see in a visual format in DataBrew. Now I'm going to talk about each of these core concepts in more detail so that you understand how these components work and what features or what functionalities these components provide. So let's start with the data set. So as I said, data set is a way to have a read-only view to your source data, the data you want to work on. And this data, again, don't want to repeat myself multiple times, but this data could be stored into S3 or some kind of database-based source and those kind of places. The formats which we support for data stored into, say, S3 bucket are your CSV format, JSON, JSON-NL, Parquet, and XLS or Excel files. Now, AWS DataBrew datasets supports data stored in multiple places, and one of the places where you can keep your data is Amazon S3. That means you can keep your data inside S3 bucket. Or you can also leverage your data or read your data from Glue Data Catalog. So you can keep your data into one of the relational databases or Redshift, and then you can catalog that into Glue, and then that catalog you can use to create your data set into DataBrew. And the third place from where it can get your data is your data exchange. So as you know, data exchange is it's kind of you can say a marketplace service from AWS, where you can see data published by you can say data providers or data sellers, if you want to say that way. Some of the data is free for trial, some is purchasable. You can buy, you can get subscription for the data. But most important thing is that whatever data is available to you at the data marketplace through data exchange, data set can also be created from that data. That means if you want to work on some third-party data provided through AWS Data Exchange, you can use that data into DataBrew for your transformation and job purposes. So these are the at this point of time, these are the three sources from where the data set can be created. So moving on, when you create your data set, it provides you a preview of the data. So in the preview of the data, you can actually see what is your source, your location information, some information related to what kind of data format it is, what is the size of the data, and you can also look at the column level information. So you can in fact get a preview of your data, which shows your columns and rows. I think first 5 or 10 or 20, I don't remember by heart, but those many rows are showed to you in the data set preview. So the moment you create a data set, you get in your data set, without even going to the source data, you can preview your data to see how it look like. Other than the preview of the data, you can also look into dataset profile, and dataset profile actually works at two levels. You can look at your data. You can look at the data all together. So if you want to get any kind of statistics or any kind of volumetrics related to data as a whole, you can look into a data profile from that point of view. And there are more than 40 statistics which you can see you can see in your you can see the profile of your data. So for instance, you can look into what are the missing cells or duplicate rows, or how does the correlation between the data look like. All that kind of information you can look into your data set profile. Other than other than profile of the data as a whole, you can also look into column level statistics. So you can go to a particular column and you can see the value of the column to see how does the data quality look like for the data, what is mean or standard deviation of the data, how does the value distribution look like, does any kind of correlation look like of this column related to any other column. So any kind of column level statistics can also be seen for this data once you create the data set. And these statistics are data set profile are very important to understand the nature of the data you are working with, which can help you actually perform right kind of transformation or normalization on your data before you can actually use it for whatever purpose you want to process it or use it. Okay. So moving on, when you're trying to read data from S3, actually, you can always reach out to a particular file and say, hey, I want to read data from this particular file stored into S3. But it also provides you functionality where you can work with multiple files. Because it could be that you have populated your data into S3, but then it has uses certain partition on the data, and due to partition of the data, your data is not in a single file, but it is spread across multiple files, or it is spread across multiple folders in a bucket. And in that case, a data set can be created with multiple files as well. So one scenario is where you can use a folder as a location for the data set. So you can say in a data set that, okay, all the data under this folder represents my data set. And when you provide folder as a location, or like bucket and folder as a location for a data set, all the files under that folders becomes your data set. There are few conditions the files have to meet. First is that they should have the same format. These files should have the same format, and the second one is that they should have the same schema. So as long as under a folder files have the same format and same schema, they can be treated as one data set by providing folder as a location for the data set. And again, I want to confirm it one more time that you can always point to, if you don't have multiple files and say my file is my data is in this single file, in that case you can always point to a single file as a data set location. One of the powerful feature of data set, you can parameterize your S3 path. So bucket onwards. So you cannot parameterize your bucket name, but bucket onwards, if your data is spread across multiple folders and multiple files, and you want to use a regular expression to find out your folders or your file, in that case, you can very much parameterize that. So I will give you two examples and then it will make more sense to you. The first example, for instance, you see over here, it's saying that this is my bucket and this is my folder. In that folder, I have got another folder. So under this folder, all the folders which start with invoice, in those folders, look for data.json file, and those files I want to use for the data set. So it will, under this folder, under this DataBrew input folder, it will look into all the folders starting with the name invoice, and then under those folders, if it finds data.json file, it will simply use that the data for the data set. Another example, for instance, here see that, okay, I'm saying that this is my bucket and this is my folder, but then under that folder, all the files which has got 2020 in the name, those files I'm interested to create data set with. So again, you can see in these two examples that you cannot parameterize your bucket name, but under the bucket name, you can use regular expressions to filter down on the folders and the files or the objects which you want to include for your data set. And that really makes it very powerful, where you might want to create multiple data sets out of under the same folder, depending on certain expressions or naming convention. Okay, so this is very important to understand how you can work with multiple files stored into S3 for data set. Now, moving on to the second topic, second component, which is a recipe. So as I mentioned earlier, a recipe is a way to perform transformation on your data set. And when you use recipe, actually, you don't need to write any single line of code. There are more than 250 built-in transformations available, which you can use into your recipe to perform transformation or normalization or cleansing on your data. Okay, all you have to do is simply use it, apply on the columns or on the data which you want to apply on. Now, when we talk about a recipe, actually recipe has got multiple steps. So when you're applying transformation on your data under a single recipe, you can perform multiple steps, and each of these steps actually represent a single transformation which you are providing. So example could be that you're saying, okay, let's remove the rows where the columns are null. Then you might want to merge two columns together. You might want to split one column into two, and then you perform some other transformation. All those transformations you can configure as individual steps in a sequence in your recipe, so that when this recipe actually is applied on the data, it will simply perform all these stepwise transformation on the data to give you the ultimate result out. Now, few more things to know. When you are creating a recipe, each recipe when you create in the beginning is a project level as a recipe. And what I mean by that means that you're creating a recipe which is used by a project only. So in a project, you create a recipe, and then this project only uses that recipe. This recipe is not used by any other project. But there could be a scenario where you say, oh, I have created a wonderful recipe which is very much reusable, which I can apply on other data set, other similar data sets. In that case, actually, you can do something to make a reusability of your recipe. And what you do actually in that case, that you simply publish your recipe. So you simply promote your recipe to be a published recipe. And once the recipe is a published recipe, it is no more a project level recipe. Because remember, the project level recipe you can only use in a project which it is associated with. But once you publish a recipe to be a published recipe, then it can be used with any project. So any project can say, I'm not going to create my own recipe, but I have a published recipe which makes perfect sense for me because the kind of data set I have is similar to what recipe it works on, and that recipe is performing the same kind of transformation I'm looking into. And in that case, you can simply say, I'm going to use one of the published recipe. I'm not going to create my own recipe. So keep in mind that you always have a feature to able to create a published recipe, promote a published recipe, which then other projects can also use, and that way you can increase sharing of your recipe with other projects. Now, when you are publishing a recipe, a recipe maintains their own version control, so you can always create a version of the recipe. So you can create one version, and after some time you are making some changes, you can create a new version, so you can maintain multiple versions of the recipe. Okay. So that was about the recipe. Now coming back to the project. So as I said, that project is a workspace, is a kind of a workspace where you can do your data analysis, you can do your data You can visualize your data. You can see the profile of the data, as well as you can also perform transformations using recipe. So a project always has two mandatory components. One is the data set this project is working with, and second is the recipe you are performing on this data set to do the transformation. So at high level, you can say that one project constitute basically data set and recipe. Okay, and this provides you a workspace where you can look into data, you can analyze your data, plus you can use a recipe to perform transformation on the data. Now, here's by the screenshot of the workspace environments. You can see here, it shows the data over here. This is the data set you're working with. Now, some of the icons you see over here, these are the icons you can actually use to perform different type of transformations on the data. So you can add steps for the transformation. And then here on the right hand side, you can see the recipe where you simply add your steps, and these steps are nothing but one of the transformation you want to use from here. And then you configure your transformation, and those transformations are then applied on your data. Now, one of the best feature of recipe I like is that when you apply certain set of transformation, you can always do a preview of your transformation. So you can say that, okay, I applied certain transformation, give me a preview of the data. How does my data look like after transformation? And once you are satisfied with the preview of your data after transformation, you can apply those transformations to change the data. Again, keep in mind, when you are applying the transformation, you are not applying the transformation at the source. Your data which you read from the source is always the read-only data. You are simply applying the transformation in your data set, and then you can convert that into a job so that when this job runs, it will read the data, apply the transformation, and will save the transformed data at the destination you configure. So moving on next, so how does what job does? So basically you used data set and recipe and project to do apply different types of manual transformation on your data. Now you are happy with that, and you want to convert into some kind of automated job which you can schedule to run at certain frequency, which and then it simply reads your source data, apply the transformation. That's how it works. And that's what the task of the job is actually. And there are two types of jobs you can actually create. One is suppose you don't want to do any transformation, but you want to do profiling of your data set. In that case, you can create a profile job. So you can see your profile. You can see a profile in the visual format as well, but sometimes if data is very big, you might want to create a profile job to see how does your data volumetrics as well as statistics look like, and for that you can create a profile job. Other than that, you can also create a recipe job, and the purpose of the recipe job is to automatically apply the transformations defined into recipe to your data set. So this is a scenario where you want to read data from the source, apply the transformation on top of that, and then write to some destination. So the typical, of course, profile job is used, especially when you want to do profiling of the data to understand how it looks like and how you might want to transform or normalize it before it makes some purpose to you. But a typical use case after profiling your data is that in your project environment, you used some data set, applied certain transformation into that, and this whole manual or visual transformation you actually perform, you want to convert that into a recipe job. And then this recipe job can be triggered based on events or based on schedule to perform these transformations automatic on your source data. Yeah. So again, when you're generating your job, you're not writing even a single line of code. All you're saying is that whatever I did so far, convert that into a job, and it will simply create a DataBrew job for you. Again, guys, when you do the workshop and do hands-on with this, you will get more experience of how it works. Okay. So moving on, what kind of output the job supports. So you can see that the job can actually write output in both compressed and uncompressed format. And these are some of the data formats it supports when writing data in the output at the output location in compressed or uncompressed format. Other than that, there are many other configurations you can do with the job. So for instance, job is an automated task. You can provide how many compute nodes this job can run on in parallel. Default is 5 nodes, but you can go up to maximum 10 nodes. You can define a timeout period for the job. You can define number of retries so that if job fails, it can go till number of retries. And then you can also schedule your job. If you want to run a job based on events, that you cannot configure at this point of time. For that, you have to use the event mechanism and probably use Lambda functions to simply start the job on the occurrence of the event. Okay. So that was about the job. So moving on, we can also use data lineage inside the DataBrew, which basically talks about that how your data has been used in your project. And here is an example. For instance, it says that there is a data set which you created out of S3 bucket. It gives you location of the S3 bucket as well. What is the size of data? And then you simply converted that into a job, which is writing the output to some other location. Depending on basically, this is a very simple example of data lineage, but you can create a very complex data transformation thing. And in that case, if you want to see how does your data lineage look like in terms of its journey from source to the destination, you can use data lineage part of the feature of the DataBrew to visualize that. Okay, so these were some of the important topics which I wanted to cover to describe the features and capabilities of the DataBrew. Now, as a part of the workshop, to give you hands-on experience, what we are building today is that we will have a data stored into our relational database service, which will be cataloged into your Glue. And then this catalog we will use to create a data set. Then this data set we will use inside a project. Then we'll apply certain recipe on this data to do certain transformation, and then we'll simply convert that into a recipe job. And then this recipe job actually will write that data to a destination S3 location. So data comes from RDS, goes to S3, and in between it goes through life of kind of being created as a data set, then apply the transformation, then convert it to the job, and then job will simply write to the S3 location. So this is again a picture I took from data lineage screen of the workshop which I have built, but this shows you the flow we are going to build today as a part of the workshop. In order to do this workshop, we have created and published a workshop to our website, aws-dozo.com. What I'm going to, the URL of this, by the way, workshop has been provided in the description box below. Now, what we are going to do is that I'm going to walk you through the steps of this workshop, and I will explain what we are doing there. And then you can run this workshop by your own, at your own pace to get hands-on experience about DataBrew. So let's, without wasting any more time, let's jump onto the workshop. So here is the workshop which is published to our website, aws-dozo.com. Let me start the workshop. So here is the workshop, and you can see that it actually provides number of steps you need to perform to complete this workshop. Some of the initial steps is more of a preparation step where we create an IAM role, and then we create security group, S3 bucket for the source location. We launch RDS instance, then we create a private link for the VPC, and then finally we catalog data into Glue catalog, and then we use Glue DataBrew to perform transformation on this data, and then convert that into a job so that it can automatically run and write to the destination. So let's get started. So the first step is the prerequisite, which tells that you need to have an AWS account with administrative access in order to perform this workshop. And if you don't have, you might want to use this link to create a free trial account. Next, we create an S3 bucket, and this S3 bucket is actually used by, not S3 bucket, we create an IAM role, and this IAM role is used by Glue to call other AWS services. So for instance, in this case, Glue will actually talk to the RDS instance, and will also talk, to catalog the data, and this role will provide Glue the authorization to perform that job. So we go to the IS management console. We say we want to create a role for the Glue. We select Glue as a service. Just to keep it very simple, we give this role administrative privilege. And then we give this role a name called Dojo Glue role, and we create the role. So this is Dojo Glue role is the role the Glue is going to use when it's performing its action, like running crawlers and those kind of things. Now we create security group and also the destination S3 location where the data will be written by the job, and this security group will be used by RDS instance. So we go to the VPC management console and say we want to create a new security group, and this security group we say Dojo MySQL security group, which gives access to MySQL Aurora. So our database instance is going to be actually MySQL compatible Aurora serverless. So we simply say that we are allowing traffic for MySQL Aurora, and then we also do self-referencing with the group because this security group is going to be used by Glue connection, and one of the requirement is to have a self-reference on all TCP communication for the security group itself. Okay, having configured our security group, then we create this bucket into S3, which is going to work as the destination location for the DataBrew job we will create. So moving on, once our security group is ready, then we launch the RDS instance, which is going to work as the source location for the data set. So we go to RDS management console. We say we want to create a new database instance. We go for a standard create, Amazon Aurora. We want to use MySQL compatible, and we are going to use serverless just to keep the cost very low for this workshop. We give this database instance a name. We provide admin login name and password. And then we provide minimum capacity so that we don't cost much when we're doing this workshop. And then in the connectivity section, we are going to launch this RDS instance into default VPC. So we provide the default VPC and default subnet group. And then finally, in the security group, we simply configure with the security group we created in the previous step. Since we are going to use query editor to create table and data into this database instance, that query editor needs data API to make calls. So we also enable data API on the RDS instance, and we simply create the database instance. Once the database instance has been created, we simply make note of the endpoint as we need it later when we configure connection for the connection in the Glue for the cataloging purpose. So once my database instance is ready, we go to the query editor because we want to create some source data. And in this case, we go to the query editor and then we connect to the database instance using the login name and password. And then we simply run this script. And what this script is doing is pretty straightforward. It's first creating a Dojo database as a new database. And then we create this employees table. And then we simply insert some sample data into this employees table. And this employees table in Dojo database, we are going to use as a source data, which will simply use with DataBrew and later convert create a DataBrew job to perform automated ETL with transformation. So having done that, one of the other step is to create private link. So when you are using VPC based resources, actually your Glue needs to talk to S3, and for that purpose, Glue uses S3 endpoint, and for that purpose, we need to launch an S3 endpoint into default VPC. What we are going to do for that is that we go to VPC Management Console, we click on the endpoints, then we create an endpoint, and this is endpoint for S3. We simply say that we are going to use the default VPC, and we use the default route table, which basically gives access from all three subnets to the S3 in the default VPC. And just to keep it simple, we give full access. That means with this endpoint, the person can perform any action on the S3 bucket. But basically, in production environment, you might want to just restrict it to certain buckets and certain operations only. So we create the S3 endpoint, and now we are good. Now we can configure the Glue so that my DataBrew can use Glue catalog as a source for the dataset creation. So we click on the Glue configure Glue step, where first step is to add a database for the Glue catalog. So we simply say DojoDB is the database for the Glue catalog. So first we create that. Then we are adding a connection to the RDS instance, Glue connection. To do so, we simply click on add connection, and then we say the name of the connection is Dojo connection. It is a JDBC type of connection because we are talking to a relational database, and then we simply configure rest of the things. So here you provide JDBC URL, which takes the format like JDBC. Protocol is MySQL. Then your RDS instance DB instance name. Your port is 3306. And your database is Dojo database. So we provide your JDBC URL in this format. Then you provide your login name, password, default VPC, and one of the subnets, because you can use any of those subnets from the default VPC. And then you simply use the same security group which has been is configured for your RDS instance. And once you have done that, you create your connection, and when your connection is created, you want to test the connection to see if connection can talk to the RDS instance in the back. So when you click on the connection, it says what IAM role you want to use to perform this test, and you simply say this Dojo Glue role which you have created earlier to perform the test, and you run the test. Test takes some time, but very soon you will see a message saying that your Dojo connection is successful. That means your connection was able to talk to the RDS instance at the port configured. So we are all good now. Now it is time to go and catalog the data. For that, we configure the crawler. And in order to configure the crawler, we say on the same Glue console, you want to add a crawler. You give crawler a nice name, in this case, Dojo crawler. And then it will ask, okay, so what is your data source? So my data source is JDBC. So, okay, what connection should I use to talk to JDBC endpoint? And you simply provide the Dojo connection you have configured. And then you say, okay, what should I include? So here you're saying that I want to include DojoDB and then this percentage sign. That means under my DojoDB database, all tables should be included. And in this case, we have just one table called employees, but yeah, here is the place where you can configure your include path to select certain table, certain set of tables. And once you have done that, it asks you what role it should use to do the cataloging. And again, you provide Dojo Glue role, which you have used earlier. It says, how do you want to run the crawler? So you can basically schedule the crawler. But in this case, since we are doing a hands-on workshop, we simply say we will run it on demand. Then it asks that where it should write the output catalog. And you say, write the output catalog into Dojo database. And then this will create the crawler. Then you select the crawler and you run it. And when the crawler will finish running, in this case it took 2 minutes to finish the running. You see that one table has been created, and it is the employee table under Dojo database, which has now been cataloged. And just to see that, if you can go to the tables part in your Glue console, you can see that your database underscore table name, that's how it has generated the table for catalog for your table in your RDS instance. Now my table has been cataloged, my source data has been cataloged. Now I can move on to Glue DataBrew to use this catalog to connect to the source data and then perform the kind of transformation I want to perform. So in order to do so, we move on to the next step, which is configuring the Glue DataBrew. So we go to the Glue DataBrew, and first thing first, we want to connect to a data set. So we simply click on connect to a data set. We give this data set a nice name called Dojo data set. Now you can see here on the left-hand side various sources from where you can read your data. In this case, we are reading it from the RDS table. So we simply click on this option called RDS table. It will show you that, hey, there is a Dojo database where there is a table called there is a Dojo DB where there is a table catalog as Dojo DB underscore employee. You simply select that as a source table, and then your data set is created. Simply create data set. And when you do so, actually you have now created a data set which is actually providing you read-only access to data stored into the RDS instance. Once your data set has been created, you can see here, you can select the data set and say, I want to create a project with data set. That means you are creating a workspace where you can actually use the data set along with recipes to perform certain transformation. So you click on this create project with the data set. It will ask you certain information like what is the project name, and you can say this is Dojo project in a project name. Then it says, okay, let's create a new recipe, and in this case you can say, of course you can if you have any published recipe, you can attach that published recipe as well. But in this case we are saying that or you can also import steps from the recipe. But in this case, since we are doing it first time, there is no recipe. It says, okay, let's create a new recipe, and it generates a recipe name. Of course, you can change that. You keep your data set selection like that, and then in other configuration, you say that I want to create a new role, which will give DataBrew required permission to talk to the data. So, and with that, we simply create the project. The project environment creation will start. It can take a while because basically it's literally launching a compute instance for you where you can run your visual transformations and also convert that into a job. And also it is going to configure your environment, your compute environment with the required runtime so that all these tasks can be performed. So it takes a while to create the environment, though it's not very long. It happens within a minute or two. And once your project environment is up and running, you can see that it's showing you the preview of your data. You can see this is the data which is coming from the relational database. You can this is the grid view of the data. You can see the schema view and profile view of data, and these are different transformations you can perform on the data. Now the transformation which we want to perform today is that you have this first name and last name, and I want to actually use this join transformation over here to merge this into say full name kind of thing. So to do so, what we do is that we simply click on this merge button, and then it will open up the recipe pan where you can configure this merge button. So in this merge button, I'm saying that my source columns are last name and first name. Then I'm going to use this hyphen as a way to separate these two names. Again, you can provide a space if you want, and the new column generated will be full name. Now I have configured my transformation for the merge, but I don't want to apply it. By applying it, that you're changing your view of your data set. I don't want to do that. Before that, I want to do a preview of the changes to see is it doing the transformation in the way I want to see it. I want to get it in the last. So simply click on the preview changes button. When you click on the preview changes button, it will show you the preview of how your outcome look like. So for instance, you can see here it's saying that this first name and last name both will be deleted. You can see will be deleted, and then you will get a new column full name where the data will look like the following. So yeah, looks like what I want. And once I'm happy with this outcome, I can simply click on the apply button over here, and then that apply button will simply apply the transformation. You can see here that now I don't have employee number, first name, last name, but my data set look like employee number and full name. Now suppose, and you can see on the right hand side in the recipe part, it has added one step, which is simply performing merge on the columns. Now if you want to perform some other set of operations like grouping the data or doing some union or applying some kind of function, you can, or splitting, you can, or looking for duplicates, you can do that as well. But for now, for this workshop, we kept it very simple. So say, okay, fine, this is what the transformation I want. Now I want to convert this into an automated job. And to do so, you simply click on the create job button over here. And when you convert to click create job button, what it's going to do, that is going to take this data set, is going to take this recipe and convert it into an automated job, which you can again run based on the schedule or based on the event. So when you click on the create job, it will ask for certain configuration. So it will say, what is your job name? You provide that. It shows you what data set it is using, what recipe it is using. It asks for the output setting. In this case, we are saying that let's write into this S3 bucket in the CSV format. I don't want any compression. Just keep it simple. And then for the role, what role we created earlier when we are launching the project, the same role we selected over here for the job as well. And then we simply, you can simply create the job and run it later, or you can create and run the job both. In this case, we simply click on the create and run the job, and you can see that your job has will start running. It will take a while when the job will finish, probably a couple of minutes or even less than that. And you wait till the status of the job changes to succeeded, and then you can actually very much go to the target location. Like in this case, I'm going to this Tojo target bucket location. I can see that my CSV file has been created at the target location. So this was example how the transformation, which you can open this file to actually see that it is in the same format you have seen into the visual transformation or not. And I checked it, it works, but I leave it to you. You can verify your own when you do this workshop. And you can see that how you can perform manual transformation in DataBrew. And once you're happy with that outcome of that transformation, actually you can convert that into a job. And that job you can then run based on schedule or based on event to keep performing these transformations automatic. So that was the end of the activities from the DataBrew point of view. Now next step is to go and clean up the resources so that you don't incur any cost post the workshop. So that was all for the workshop, guys, today. Hope you like it. And if you like, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. There are many other similar workshop and exercises in AWS published to our website aws-dojo.com, which you can use to learn about AWS services. Please visit our website, and yeah, feel free to run the workshop you want to run or exercise you want to learn, and get hands-on experience of using AWS services. We always look forward to your feedback and comments, and yeah, you can talk us about what you like, what you don't like, what new content you want. You can either provide those feedback and comments in the YouTube comment section, or you can also click on the contact us tab over here and can provide feedback from there from there as well. So we always look forward to your feedback for the improvement. And that is all for today. I promise to come back again in a couple of days' time to talk about some other AWS services. In the meantime, please stay safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.